Hi guys, good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. This is GNG LinkedIn Live segment, Gil and Gurpreet. We're back from a 1 week off. Today we have an interesting topic, actually Gil's post and Gil's topic. I'm just gonna add my 2 cents. First, Gil's gonna go. But I guess Gil, it's based on an article, stats
It's based
report.
on what a consultant did some work, I think, with auto companies. I forget now, but I believe it was with auto companies. They did work in the late 80s.
Oh,
This
late
was
80s.
this was a this was a consultant that did work in the late 80s. They also put a number on the cost of it as well, which I'll get to into in a moment.
Okay, so why don't you tell us about this report?
It's less about the report and more about the concept, because for me, this is something that I got empirically over my career, but I didn't really understand it and conceptualize it until I saw this idea a few years ago. So, in all of my years working as a consultant, when I first started, I knew nothing about business. I came in as a blank slate.
Okay.
But one of the things that I realized over the years from the work, because I worked with companies from frontline right through to the CEO. That was the projects we were doing. Many of the projects were with the leadership team, but also working with everyone through frontline staff. And one of the things that dawned on me after a couple of years of doing the work was that the CEO is generally the most clueless person of what's actually happening within the business. And this was something I noticed time and time again, because for the work that we were doing, we would interview people. We would interview CEO, we would interview their team, we would do focus groups with all levels of staff, all departments. And the picture you'd always get from the leadership team about how things were within the company was 99 times out of 100 significantly rosier than the reality. They always had the belief that certain things they implemented were working. They always had the belief that managers were doing the things they were supposed to be doing. And then as you move closer and closer to the front line, you find out what's actually happening. You
Isn't it
find
interesting though, like
it,
how they assume it's working or assuming one thing, but the reality is totally something else?
and there's a lot of reasons for that, which is really the purpose of the show today, to go into that, because it is leadership's responsibility. I
Definitely.
will start and say, they're the ones that create the environment. They're the ones that create the experience. They're the ones that create the impetus for whether or not frontline staff are going to listen and whether frontline staff are going to communicate in the other direction. It's not that most people walk into a job and say, well, I'm not telling leadership anything, because I've worked with leadership teams that have an open line of communication to frontline staff. And I've worked with leadership teams that live in their ivory tower and have no idea anybody's names, right? And
Yeah.
ultimately, it's their behaviors that create the percentages. So whereas the percentages were 4% for top leadership, 100% for frontline staff, I think it's 74% for supervisors, and somewhere I think in the 30s or 40s for their managers. So as you go up the ladder, the percent decreases. I don't agree with those numbers at all, because I think there's a significant number of things that frontline staff can't know, and not saying they're not allowed to know, but they're just not able to know with the information they have. There are things that leaders see that are problems that frontline staff don't see. The idea that it's 4%, I don't agree with at all, because there's a lot of organizations where it's significantly higher than that, where they know about what's going on. It's
Yeah.
never going to be 100%. It's
Yeah.
never going to be as high as what it is among the frontline staff, because they're the ones living it day to day. They know the ones of what it's like to experience working for the supervisors, what it's like dealing with the clientele or the customers. They know what it's like what the paperwork they have to do, what technology they have to interact with, their physical environment. Leadership don't see that. They don't live that every day. And ultimately, there are things that leadership traditionally do that keep that down. That this traditional model of leadership that you and I are both pushing to destroy, which is around leaders thinking they know everything, or that they think they need to know everything. So they don't ask the questions, and they don't try to understand what is actually happening with frontline staff. So
I think it's also not knowing, but also not willing to find out, or have this conception that you're the CEO, so you know everything. You know what's best. You know everything. You don't need to ask. And it's your way. You're the visionary, and this is how it's supposed to be. I've seen leaders like that too, and I can see the disconnect. And yeah, I agree. Maybe the percentage is way too low, like 4%. I think companies are getting better at
absolutely, they're getting better, but they're not great. They're really
but there's no
still
great
not great.
company. There's no perfect company out there. But yeah, I agree with you. Maybe the numbers are not so accurate in today's world, in today's economy, and how companies are run. But definitely, yeah, much work needs to be done on every leader.
Yeah. And so the leaders that I've worked with over the years, they're generally on one end or the other, or somewhere in the middle of a spectrum, an evolution of leadership, which starts at one end of the spectrum, which is a leader that believes they know everything. They don't have to ask. It doesn't matter what employees are thinking. They make the decisions, and everybody just has to follow through with it. All the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is a servant leader, somebody who's co-creating the environment, co-creating the experience, and understanding the importance of people's voices, and having voice of the employee be an integral decision-making tool. Most leaders are somewhere in between there. There are a lot of leaders who think they want to ask, but then don't know how to ask.
I was gonna
That's
say,
part of the problem.
I was gonna say there's also leaders who are scared to know,
Oh, absolutely.
to know the truth, and to ask, because what if I learned something and I don't like it? I don't like, I've worked with some small companies where the CEO wanted the friend image. He wanted everyone to like him, so he was didn't want to know things, because it's like better to turn a blind eye, because everybody likes me, I'm a friend buddy, I'm a buddy person. But it's like, yeah, you don't run companies on buddy. You can't be friends with your employees. I'm not saying you can't be friends, but you're a leader, right? You're gonna have to make tough decisions. You need to know what's going on. You shouldn't be scared to know. The CEO, which was his wife, she had a bad rep but didn't know. She actually had no clue that staff didn't like her. It wasn't that they didn't like her, it was just some things about her, controlling, putting cameras everywhere and watching you like a hawk. So I think it's also where some leaders, they're scared to want to know.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because it's that unknown, right? It's that what am I going to find out? What am I going to be smacked in the face with? That scares me, that uncertainty of it. And then there's the other side of it. Now that I know, I'll be expected to do something about it. Because that's the other side that I've seen. I've sat with many employee groups who've expressed extreme frustration that leadership will ask them the question and then do absolutely nothing about it, which then makes things significantly worse, because at least before you ask the question, you can feign ignorance. You can say, oh, I didn't know it was an issue. Not that that's helpful, but at least, there's a plausible deniability there. But if you ask the question and you have the entire employee population saying this is an issue, and the entire employee population knows it's an issue, and you're not doing anything about it, you're demotivating them. You're actively creating a negative environment for them, because instead of building their trust, because they need your trust to be able to articulate those things, or they need to trust you. to be able to articulate those things. So you have a first survey, never had a survey before, and you ask a bunch of questions. There are a few things that you need to do to maintain people's trust, to maintain people's belief that it's worthwhile saying something in the future. So the first thing that leaders need to do is say, this is what we heard. Share the results. Be open about the results. Say, hey, look, these are the things you said. You said you like X, you said you don't like Y. From that, leaders then need to articulate, okay, so this is what we've internalized. This is what has caused these problems because we've internalized it, assessed it, understood it. And finally, this is what we're doing about it. And demonstrate that you're actually doing something about it. You can't do something about everything. You can't do something about every little employee complaint, every little quirk, every little problem. That is just impossible. But if you understand broadly what are the issues that are affecting your employee population, but you only get that information from them, empathy doesn't happen in your own head. Empathy can't just stay in your own head. Then that's just your own narrative. That's not empathy. But by asking these questions with the genuine intent of doing something about it, that's the only way you're going to get people to share honest information. Because honestly, most employees I've spoken to don't really trust employee surveys. And
but
leadership
that's something we've been talking about for all these months, right? Surveys, in my opinion, surveys don't work. Surveys don't really work. Is a lot of unless you're doing them frequently, but still, like, you shouldn't be doing it frequently. I think having open communication, something we've talked over and over and about in our show since March, is it's about communication. You have to have open communication. No one expects you to have all the answers. Employees don't expect you to know it all. And yeah, there will be, and earlier you mentioned that, yes, you may not be able to do everything the employee is complaining about, but the key is to go communicate back and tell them, I heard you. Here's the steps I'm taking. Here's what we can do right now. Here's what we're looking to do, the plan. And here's what we can do, and tell them why you can't do it. It's about communication. I found the employee surveys, first of all, how do you even know if the employees are really honestly telling you the truth? Or maybe they're just filling it out for the sake of filling it out, or
they're gaming the system. I have spoken to a lot of employees who have put in scores, not because that's what they believed, but because they believed that would create the outcome they're looking for. Because they believed if they put a low score, X would happen. If they put a high score, Y would happen. They worked with their colleagues to determine what scores that they should put. I don't know if I ever mentioned it to you, but I remember reading a good 5-6 months ago, there was an article I was reading that 80% of people of color don't trust employee surveys. I think it was a US survey, but 80% of people of color don't trust it. And the article went on to explain exactly why, and retribution and all of these things, that there are reasons why they don't believe it. So what kind of quality information are you actually getting from a survey if people don't trust you and don't trust answering it honestly? You're basing your decision off that data.
I think it's also, let's take a little bit of a step back. If your organization is one that does surveys, right? Maybe you're doing surveys, but then you're not taking any action. Now you've lost trust with the employees. You can continue to do surveys, but if you're not going to analyze the data, put action plan together, and implement it, employees are just going to see it as, well, you're just wasting their time to do a survey, but then they're not seeing anything come out of the survey. So I worked for a couple of organizations where we used to do surveys. One of the organizations I worked for, it was really good. Like, we actually did surveys, but we actually, as a group, so each facilities, so it's a North American company, but each facilities did their own independent surveys, and then it was up to you as a leadership team of that facility which I was part of, to now put an action plan together, review it as together, put an action plan together, put timelines on how you're going to achieve it, when you're going to achieve it, X, Y, and Z. So I was actually the one leading that because HR. But my team, my leadership team that I was part of was committed to it. We actually put in we went through all the results line by line. I read them. Everybody got a copy of it. We actually worked as leaders, as a team. We put an action plan together. We communicated with the team. Here's to our facility. So granted, our facility was small. We had maybe 50 to 100 employees, give and take, but we communicated. And what came out of that was we started doing quarterly a team company meeting with everybody as a collective company at our facility. Plus, we did monthly meeting with the team leaders to go over financial reports as well. Like, we were very transparent. We actually show the financial results. Here's the money, here's where it went, and all that stuff. Very transparent. Also had a great director I was working with who wanted to do all these things. I think you can do surveys, but the key is, are you going to do something about it? Are you going to review? Are you going to put action plans? Are you going to implement things? Is your employees going to know what you're doing? I think trust is also lost when you're doing survey after surveys and surveys, but the employees are not seeing any change. There's no change.
Why
Why are
answer?
you doing
Why
surveys, right?
answer? But I want to highlight something that you said there that I think is really, really important, which is the fact that in this leadership team that was an example, a positive example, one of the things that they did was that they trusted the employees with information. Trust is a two-way street. And if you want employees to share information with you, you have to demonstrate that you trust them as well. I can't count the number of frustrated managers in their teams because the managers didn't understand that their people didn't trust them because of the distrustful behaviors they had. So by opening up, by being more trusting with the team, they're going to be more open to share with you because, hey, we're in it together. Whereas if leadership creates a divide by having an information hoarding, by separating who knows what, obviously that's always going to happen to a certain extent, but it happens at different levels and different transparency within organizations. If you're transparent as leadership, you're more likely to get a transparent response from your employees. If you're closed door and you're hiding everything, your employees are going to close their doors to you and they're going to hide their information from you.
They are, because that's exactly what happened prior to. So the little part I left out was before I joined the organization, actually a US company bought out the Canadian operation. So there was a whole wipeout of leadership team. They got rid of the old one. They discovered a lot of problems. So they got rid of the old one. A new one was formed. I was part of the new one. And the problem with that facility was it was underperforming and they were losing money. Like, we were negative. The facility was in negative. And the only way we knew how to change that was, and one of my input was, we got to communicate, right? Like, there's no way we can quickly turn this facility around with just us, like the leadership. We can't. We're going to need every single person in the company to make the negative somehow catch up to at least break even, and then eventually go into making money, right? And the only reason we were known as the underdog facility with the US company, because we were in negative. Our facility was not making money at all. But then we were recognized as not an underground, but we were called the dream team in the entire organization, because how quickly we turned things around in the facility, got it up to, touch wood, we got it up to making profits. And the only way we were able to do this was transparency, communication. We openly told the employees what was going on. And hence where the numbers came from. Director came to me, hey, I want to do this. What's your input? I said, it's great. Like if we can show them finance, like the numbers, right? Numbers paints a really clear picture. As far as the employee is concerned, they think you're making money because they're working, right? Orders are coming in and they're not seeing everything. They don't know that this facility is in negative balance.
By the
So
way, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to point out there that that's an example
of
of
good
where
leaders.
frontline staff aren't going to know all of the problems that leadership might know. But it's another
It's
example
also
where
vice versa too, right? Like
where communication also
is the key.
benefits that.
Yeah.
So it is that definitely is a really interesting story. Sorry, I just wanted to interject there and make sure that point was made.
That's a great point because they didn't know what was going on. We probably knew what was going on the floor because the production manager and supervisors were very hands-on. So that was the key. But it's because the director wanted to communicate because they didn't know what was going on. And he came to me, I'm like, yeah, like, like there's certain things we can like maybe white out and hide. Let's just review it. But I don't think there's any harm to show numbers so they get it that, hey, here's what we look like and here's what we need to look like. Here's how, hey, but you know what? We did it as a group. We didn't say, here's what we think we need to do. Here's what our position looks like. Here's our numbers. Here's where we're losing money. What do you think? Here, we need to turn things around. How can we turn things around? Because we need to make money. If we make money, this facility will exist. If we don't make money, hello, we just got bought out by US and they're going to close this facility down. And we were the only facility in Canada. And we have a lot to gain here too. If we turn things around, we can open more facilities, right? So it became a team effort from ground down to all the way to up. It was every single person in the organization that helped turn things around. And it was only due to a great leader that was director of our operation that said, hey, let's tell them about our numbers. Let's show them so they get a clear understanding. And I think that was what did it, because employees actually saw that, yeah, you know what, we've been getting raises, but company's not making money. So it really, everybody came together and it became a project for everyone to, it was amazing because everybody came together for a common goal. The common goal was we need to make money. We need to get out of the negative hole we're in. But we end up doing more than that. We got out of the negative hole, but we also started making money. And it only happened because we all came together and had open communication about it.
Absolutely. Your director brought everybody onto the board, all looking at the same vision, all bringing people to the same vision. It connected people with an understanding of what their role was in the company and really the impact that they were having and that the company was having. And that sounds like a really great way of turning it around, because that communication isn't just one direction. Because if it is just one direction, it's going to be significantly limited.
I think sorry to cut you off, Gil, but I just want to add that I think this is going back to your post, right? What does it cost organization? If you don't come together as a team and share information, it is costing you. Yeah, you may not see it physically as a dollar value on your financials, but it is a cost. Just imagine when you come together, like that's something that I've learned in that role was it's amazing when you're transparent, you have communication, you come together, you work as a team. It's actually amazing as a company what you can accomplish. And guess what? It is the dollar value. It's going to go up. You're going to make more money.
You're making decisions from better data. Instead of just making decisions from what is in the leaders' heads, you're making decisions from what's in everybody's heads. That's the thing. And the communication aspect, the two-way communication aspect is fundamental for trust. And it's funny because it compounds on itself, because without complete trust, you don't get complete communication, which then perpetuates itself. But if you build trust, which the responsibility is to create that environment is with leadership. That's whose responsibility it is. And the way I often think about, in terms of breaking the iceberg of ignorance would be, or is always around voice of employee. And when I think of voice of employee, I often think about the fact that most organizations at best have this yearly or every other year survey. And what I liken that to is the macro level of having a yearly performance review. Meaningless. It is outright meaningless because there's information that, why would you make a decision in January and assume in November that was still the right decision without any data in the ensuing 11 months?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not collecting the data, if you're not collecting the information, you're flying blind. You're completely missing the point, and you need to build that trust, and you need to build the voice of the employee into your work. Otherwise, you're not hearing everything, and you're certainly not hearing it at a time that's useful. You can't figure out in one employee survey, especially knowing that survey fatigue kicks in after about 35, 40 elements, you're not going to find out the information you need. So that is one of the things that leadership needs to understand is it's information they're missing. It's valuable information. It's costing their company money every single day. A lot of money. That lack of information is costing you money. And unless you actively do something to collect that information, it's just going to continue costing you. It's just the problems are going to continue, they're going to fester, and they're going to show up at customers and clients eventually. Because that's who ends up creating the customer experience, but the employees. So if the employees are having a bad experience, it's going to roll over to customers.
It's also, you said, when you said missing, it's also you missing out on so many great opportunities that the company can possibly leverage to grow their company. I look at it this way: every opportunity you're losing is an opportunity of lost revenues too. You're losing money. You can be making, say you're making 10 million. If you adopt open communication, transparency, involve every single person in the organization as one team, you can probably double those revenues in a year. And that 1 year mark for service, how you tied it back to employee performance. Yeah. Why are you waiting for a year to do a survey and then find out all the problems that were happening? Why aren't we finding out about problems as it happened? This requires, I'm going to go back to my boss, my first boss, who used to spend so much time on the floor. But that's what you're supposed to do as a leader, right? You're supposed to be out on the floor. Granted, organizations do not run traditionally way like 20 years ago where manager truly meant a manager. Now managers really not 100% just a manager. They also have work that they're performing. So I get it. But if you actually just implement, even if you do 10 minutes every morning, it's still better than not doing it. Like just walking around your office, your team, talking to them, casual talk, good morning. It's amazing how many things you can undiscover on the spot. I did this as an HR manager. Actually, even before I was an HR manager, I did it because I had a good example from my great boss, how important it is to be out on the floor, because you can tackle problems right there and then you don't need surveys. You don't need to do a yearly survey. You're doing it every it should be a daily thing. Hence why one of the segments I talked about was implementing company culture committee. If you implement a committee, kind of like a union, I don't want to talk about too much about union, but it's like a union, right? You have a voice, your employees have a voice, and hence why companies did end up going with the unions. It was because the employees were not being heard. You can avoid union. You don't need union. But you can create an environment where you have employees have a voice, and that can be a company culture committee, and you can get the data daily. You can get that data information
Exactly.
daily.
If you create the environment, whether it be the committee, whether it be the walk arounds, whether it be, the relationship managers have with their employees, because that's also one of the things that I found is that it's not always necessarily in that 10-minute walk around, but the fact that you've shown yourself open during that time Invite other people to come to you when they do have a problem. If you're just this mystical person who sits behind a desk and only comes out when there's problems, people aren't going to come to you with issues.
No,
but if you show them
that's
you're
the
on their
imagery
team,
projector.
you're walking around, you want to know, then guess what? When it happens, because it will happen, because life happens, because problems happen. That's the way it is. That's how, anytime we have people in the same space, problems are going to happen. No company is perfect. But if you find out about those problems, you can solve them as opposed to letting them fester until the next survey when you just get a negative score. Or even worse, the person is no longer there by the time the survey happens because they didn't tell you and they just took a job elsewhere.
Yeah, that can happen too. But just to go back on something you said, that when you only come out of your office because there's a problem happen, but then that goes back to imaging, right? Now, if you only step out of your office when there's a problem, guess what? Your employees know that you only come out when there's a problem. So that's your image now with the employees. That's not inviting image. They're not going to feel comfortable coming and talking to you. But if you are somebody that every day does this practice, that's you building a relationship with the employees. That's you showing that you're open to communication, inviting, you want to build a relationship. When people trust you, they will open up to you. But also employees also open up to their peers. So having the cultural committee actually gives them a voice without fearing that their voice is going to get lost, or they might get in trouble. A lot of times employees don't want to voice things, is also the fear of getting in trouble from their boss, right? Like they don't want to rock the boat by giving an honest, open discussion and feedback, because they don't want to be in the bad side of their boss too, right? Which is
They don't want to be the complainer. Nobody wants to be the complainer. So really, I mean, I guess one thing, the way I'll really sum it up is this, is that it's cyclical. It really becomes a whole circle of understanding what managers, what leaders' responsibilities are to create the environment, to create the opportunities for employees to share their voice, listening to the voice, in doing something about it, which will then perpetuate the cycle of people trusting them and sharing their opinions. That's what needs to continue to happen, and it's an ongoing activity. It's not something that leadership can just check a box and say, oh, well, we've got voice of employee, now there goes that iceberg of ignorance. It doesn't work like that. It's an ongoing effort, and it requires intent to be able to break that down, because you want to break that down, it's costing you money.
Yeah. So we're going to end on that note. We're ending our segment today, GNG LinkedIn Live. We'll be back Thursday, I think the same time. We're kind of playing around with the timing right now. But if there's a topic you want us to cover, feel free to reach out to Gil or myself, Gurpreet, on LinkedIn. Let us know what topics you want us to cover. More than happy to cover any topics. We do have some topics lined up. We'll announce it in the tomorrow or coming day before Thursday. Also, if you missed the segment, you can always catch it, the replay, on my LinkedIn profile. Just click on my profile, go under the activities, you will see it. So we will see you guys on Thursday. I think same time, right, Gil?
Yeah, let's do 2 p.m. on Thursday.
2 p.m. Thursday, we'll be back with another great topic. Stay tuned. Until then, enjoy the hot weather if you're in Toronto that we're having. And we will see you guys on Thursday. Bye.